I remember the first time I met you, we were having coffee. We had a discussion on how I can join TMI. I had a good impression of you, and true enough, over the years, you have been like my father, like my brother, most importantly, my coach. I won't be where I am today without you, George. You must know that. And it has a ripple effect on our lives, the people around me. I am actually very proud to have been in your space, to have the opportunity to be coached by you, and to be developed by you. And it will stay with me for a long, long time. Thank you again.
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it.
Hi George, thank you so much for being an amazing mentor and friend. I'm very grateful to have crossed paths with you. You are always so generous in sharing your knowledge, your wisdom with me. And I'm a better, more authentic leader, better coach, and better trainer because of you. Thank you again for being who you are.
George Aveling, true to his words of believing in the individual, opens me up to the world of training. Professionally, I'm a nurse with no training skills, and it was George who gave me the opportunity to be a trainer. My learning experience with George has actually touches me emotionally and shapes my thinking and my behavior to be a better person. George, I'm ever so grateful and thankful for what you have shared with me. Here, I just want to wish you and Polan all the best. And George Sifu, thank you very much. Se.
Hello, my name is Suyin, and I believe George will be speaking to you all on leadership in Mala's session in a few minutes. And I've been working with George for, I don't know, close 15 years or more. And he has been an inspiring leader for me. He's one that I would say walks the talk. He coaches us throughout. He's been very, very patient coaching. And one of the things I really remember him always telling us as we do our training, conduct training, is use questions, question. And he does that to us. You know, instead of telling us what to do, he will question us and give us tips and pointers. I remember one very significant point where I really, saluted him, because it was a point where it was a COVID situation, and we were all very stressed with this big client. So there was some team members who were not cooperating as well, or we didn't see eye to eye. And what George did, he very masterfully crafted out this session. It wasn't a binging session, but it was a session where all of us who were impacted all came together in a session, and we got to express our feelings, our thoughts about what was going on in a very positive, moving forward way. There was no blame whatsoever. And so instead of pulling us down, it actually got us very energized to try to work out our differences and move forward. So that is one of the times, of the many times, that George has made an impact on me. So thank you very much, George. Thank you.
Hey George, wanted to just give you a message. Believe it or not, it's been 2 years since we first met, and I have to say, it has been an amazing journey so far. After 2 decades in the corporate world, transitioning to the training landscape wouldn't have been such a fluid and smooth move if it wasn't for you and the entire TMI team. So I wanted to say a big thank you to you. for your generosity, kindness, and love. It's truly appreciated, and I wish you all the best for your future. Thanks, George, and keep it kicking. You're awesome.
Hi, George. I will always remember that day 16 years ago at Starbucks. That cup of coffee changed the rest of my life. In Hindi, there's a word, kismet, and that means fate. And I believe that that meeting that day was kismet, for me at least. I thank you for all that you have shared, the opportunities I've been given, and most of all, for your friendship. I wish you a wonderful life ahead. You are etched in my memory forever. God bless you.
This is NC. When I first met George, guess what happened? We weren't on the same page. No, no, no. Then we met for the second time in Starbucks. You know what he did? He literally demonstrated how he would facilitate a training session in Starbucks. Wow, that amazed me. I just wanted to be like him, at least this much. And before the day ended, he said something that really caught my heart. He said, "NC, I believe you can make magic." Wow. Thank you, George, for believing in me, for trusting in me, for having that great confidence in me, for all the hours you have coached me. I truly appreciate it a lot. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
George is a very special person because he adds value in every project. Every conversation and every tiny interaction with him, he adds value. I was on the phone and dealing with some personal matter this one time. He saw me and he came over to check on me. I brushed him off and I said it was nothing. His reply was, "Jason, I've been married for 20 years and I know when I see someone with issues at home." Just that one sentence, I felt understood and heard. Like a rock was lifted from my heart. That's the power of George. Thank you, sir. Keep doing what you do and stay genuinely, George.
Good afternoon, this is Mallory, yes, from Hearts&Minds Development Center and Behold Being Me Series 60. If you find me, sounding a little bit zen, I actually feel a little bit emotional. After listening to or watching the videos, I don't think anyone needs validation why George is very special to me. But I'll need to say it anyway because everyone boasted, I know George, these, that, right? So now it's my time. I met George 17 years ago when I held my first baby in my arms, Alexandra Shruti Chu. And I wasn't sure because I felt so conflicted between continuing my business and I love my work and being a mother that I've always wanted to be. And I had waited 8 years to be the mother to this beautiful, beautiful baby girl. And I remember being introduced to George. And, what I recall is that over a meal, and I was introduced to him by Francis, is that I just knew that I've met a man I dare call father right now, because here was a man who understood the aspiration that I wanted, both as a career woman, a professional, as much as I wanted to be the best mother I can be, right? And I would say, like everybody else said, life changed forever. I'm not too sure about you, but for me, it's life changing because I've never had another person who believed in me more than I have ever believed in myself. I've said this many times, but it's worth recording, that George has always been the wind under my wings, because he helps me fly higher than I would have on my own, because he believes in me. And that beliefs come through in every conversation, every text, every moment that I've had the great opportunity to be with him. So it's not just a privilege, but it's a blessing for me that my path has crossed, with George 17 years ago at the right time. And I dare say that, right, that if I ever got to be a better mother, definitely George had a big part in it. So with that, without much ado, I'm going to bring, if I may say, my most favorite friend, mentor, George.
Morning, Mother.
Good afternoon.
You should have warned me about that so that I could bring my Kleenex tissues. It was very touching. Thank you. Thank you. It's very, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You're most welcome, George. I think, let me tell you the difficulty I had. We had so many videos and we needed to compress it. And
everyone will say yes to you, Mother.
Well, I brought in many speakers, right? Thank you, George. But we had a very good problem. Kirtana had a very good problem because we had to compress the videos, and at some point we had to say we're not taking in any more videos. So we'll send you the ones who sent in late, right?
Thank you.
But really, I think that speaks volumes of you, because I didn't have to go second round and say, would you all send some videos? And I'm not going to say too much, because I think the video speaks for itself about who you are, right? And how you always leave footprints in every human being who gets to meet you, even if it is just one time, right? So for that, I'm not going to thank you, but I'm going to thank the universe for making you, and and I'm going to thank the universe for letting you be in Malaysia all these years, that we have benefited so much by your love. So welcome to the show, George. I love you. Thanks for saying yes. So people will be wondering, if she likes George so much, why did she take such a long time? Now, precisely, I take a long time for the people I love, because I'm thinking, how do I make the most out of that 1 hour? So, George will fit in everywhere, but I needed to figure it out. So I thought, I've really seen, George, I think I said this to you. I was reading this book, Leadership 2.0, right? And I remember reading this, and he talks about his mentor and how the mentor made a difference. And I said, wow, that's my George in my life, right? So you've been that person, and I think it's very nice to see everyone in the video who are very, very senior people in the industry, and they are so good at their work, saying the same thing about you, right? So I really think that we are glad, we are very privileged to have you to talk about fatherhood lessons for leadership actions, right? Because you are one rare person who doesn't need to transition from leadership to personal relationship, right? A lot of us figure out how to, okay, I'm professional now, I'm personal now, I'm relational now. But with you, when I'm with you, I don't have to make those transitions, and I have not seen you making those transitions. So I thought it'd be lovely to get to know you, because I want to share you, even though I'm selfish. I want to share you with the world. So tell us a little bit about, how would you describe yourself as a father? Tell us a little bit about you that the world doesn't know about.
Look, first of all, as a father, I've got one daughter, Marissa, and I'll say Marissa was, I say to Marissa, she's 36 now, so you're the daughter that I've always wanted to have. And so Marissa has been relatively easy to bring up. Part the environment, but she's a good kid as well. And I think most parents will say, "Oh, look, I'm supportive, and I'm there to nurture my child." And I think that's what she'll say, And we talk about the wind under. I asked Pauline, how would Marissa describe me, and she said, "Oh, the wind under my wings," and supportive. I think part of it is what drives the way that Pauline and I, brought Marissa up. And it was, what sort of child did we want? What sort of adult did we want to see? And we wanted Marissa to have, number one, high self-esteem. That was critical. I tell people, you give your children two major gifts, right? One is self-esteem, and the second one is education. So self-esteem became an important part of this. So that translated into the way that we communicated with Marissa. We can talk about that a bit later, in a positive way, supportive way. And then there's education as well. And it was always psychologically safe, and that's the language that I use now. I never used that language before. It was safe at home. And Marissa was in an environment where I think what Pauline and I, we don't talk negatively about other people. She's never experienced that negativity, right? So she's been brought up in that positive environment, and so supportive there for me. And one of the things that with Marissa, when you're a young child, when you've got a young child, I use a rope analogy. The rope is a little bit tight. You've got to, look after your child. But as your child gets older, you give more rope. And I remember when I was 18, I wanted to be treated like an adult. So at the age of 18, we gave the rope to Marissa, the metaphorical rope. And it was, we're here. But I remember when I was your age, I wanted to make my own decisions. I'm here for you, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. So but there's lots of stories. But I'll wait for you to come up with your questions, and then we can.
You are so cute, George. It's like I can imagine the stories that's going to come through.
Lots of stories.
Yeah. So I love that self-esteem, belief in self, and the power of education, and helping our children to be independent. And I love the clear vision about do we know what sort of adults we envision our children to be, which is fantastic. So George, I mean, I know you. I've been privileged to have these fatherhood lesson or parenthood lessons. So the one thing that I learned, two things from you that I'm very anchored. One is I remember when we first met and I was telling you about my Shruti girl. You said this and it didn't make sense, but I'm glad I was obedient, right? You said take a lot of photos, right? That was the first advice. And that this is the advice I give away when I see new parents. I said, take a lot of photos because George said so, right? And that's been a great advice. And I think the other advice that I remember is that, where you say pick your battles when they're teens.
Yeah.
That's something I am trying to practice right now because I have 3 teens, right? And so I'm remembering you, and the other person is, of course, Rajesh, who gives me a lot of good advice about parenting. So tell me, I think it's nice that Marissa is good, well, successful at 36. It's a good space for a parent to know that, my child has turned out well. But in your fatherhood journey, and I understand Marissa, you say is a good child. And we know that if you know Marissa, you'll know that, right? But share with us some of the precious lessons in fatherhood that you would share with me, because I'm going to pass this on to you because
I'll just share some stories.
Okay.
And some precious stories. Marissa, she did very well at school. In Australia, you go from years 1 to 7, that's primary school, and then years 8 to 10, lower secondary, and then the big 2 years are years 11 and 12. Yeah. So Marissa, she changed schools from primary school 1 to 7. She went to a private girls' school. Now Marissa was a high achiever, at school, and then she went to this private school, and she wanted to be part of the cool group. Right? And her results, she still was getting good results, but Pauline and I knew that she could do a lot better. So the question is, what do you do when you know your child can do a lot better, but and the results are okay, but she can do a lot better. So Pauline and I made a decision. We zipped. All right, we zipped, because again, what we, as looking back, what we didn't want to do was create a memory of my parents nagging me. I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. She's finding her own way. And I think it's about empathizing for where she was. I'm finding my own way. So we zipped. And so therefore, again, from a emotional point of view, it was pretty safe. And then we get to the end of year 10. And both Pauline and I said to Marissa, look, next 2 years are big years, and you get marked by 1 mark. It's called your comparison to the rest of the state. And I said, you're going to have this for the rest of your life. And she said to us separately, don't worry. And look, she started. So in other words, we picked our battles. We just didn't feel it was worth the battle between years 8 and 10. And then went on, and by that time, she went on to years 11 and 12 and did very well. There was another time. It was she, again, going to, at this stage, she's a young adolescent, and every day she'd come home. I was working from home. She'd come home, put a bag in the living room, go to the fridge, and then go to do whatever she had to do. Right, Marissa, could you do me a favor? When you come home, can you put your bag in your room, right? Just be a bit tidy. Yes, Dad. Next day, comes home, puts the bag in the living room, goes to the fridge. Marissa, could you do me a favor? Could you put your bag in, bring it back to the room? Yes, Dad. Third day, and she goes to the fridge. Third day, she does the same. So I thought, okay. So what I did was instead of talking, saying I told you so, I went to her bedroom. She loved her stereo. She loved the music. I unplugged one of the speakers from her stereo and put it outside. Dad, she comes home. Dad, what have you done? I said, Marissa, I asked you to put your bag in the bedroom, but I did it, so you inconvenienced me. So now I'm inconveniencing you. So it was just, so there wasn't a lot of, we didn't get into head on head. Another time, now this is how many years ago? 23 years ago, belly button rings were not a big thing, right? Marissa comes home and she said, I want to get a belly button ring. I could feel my knuckles whitening. I could feel my shoulders tightening. I could feel my neck muscles tightening as I said, I think you should do some research. All right. So instead of an outright no, was do some research. So that bought us a bit of time. And then luck prevailed. She went at this private girls' school. She had a friend who had a belly button ring, and she used to go rowing 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And, her belly button popped. So Marissa decided no need for a belly button ring. But it was more about getting through life, particularly when she's an adolescent, without a combat of, a competition of wills. And that came from a chance meeting I had with this. I was in an organisation, and there was a cleaner after hours. And Marissa was 11. She said, "How old's your daughter?" And she was an Italian lady. "How old's your daughter?" I said, "Marissa's 11. Oh, she said, soon you're not going to be very important, and your daughter's friends are going to be very important. That was the best advice we were given. So therefore we realized, and this is starting to happen. And then what happened was we started to, your default is to treat your 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old. They are growing up and they're doing what every child you want them to do. You want them to think for themselves and become more independent. But the default is, why can't, we treat them like a 10-year-old. So what we ended up doing was we moved from, treating her like a 10-year-old to negotiating, talking it through. And that worked. So it was just changing our parenting style, right, for the child. And that worked pretty well.
Nice. Thank you. All the things, all the stories I needed. So I'm not sure anyone else needs it. So for some reason, I have, I think, 8 or 10 people on LinkedIn who are very quiet. I suspect they are your spies. So come and say hello to George if you can. Good afternoon, Gerald. Thank you for joining us again. At least now you get to meet George. Thanks, Gerald. Gerald is a wonderful friend of mine who has been very supportive all throughout. So, George, has there been? So I loved. I've always loved your stories, right? Because they stay, and for us to remember. Now, has there ever been a point? Tell me, in your fatherhood journey, where you felt helpless as a father?
Not really.
All right.
No, I think it's. I think it's because Pauline and I had. Marissa never was able to play. She never did it anyway. But Pauline and I think we played a pretty good team role. We had similar views, so we'd talk things through, right? And we knew there's no playbook for being a parent, right? Or we'd talk. I've got a brother as well, and I'm close to my brother, and we'd talk things through because his daughters are about the same age. One the same age and one a couple of years older. So when we overcame uncertainty or not sure what to do because a playbook doesn't exist, by talking to each other and and particularly talking to my brother. And I found that really, really useful. And you get that outside input, and particularly so that my brother is facing that thing he'd faced because his daughter Lauren was a little bit 2 years older. He'd walked the path, might not have been that path, but we could learn from his experience.
Nice. Tanir Paul Rajmani, he's a pastor who passionately runs a home for kids, right? He's asking, how do you handle alcohol use, George?
Okay. All right. So let me tell you a very, very, very funny story, which Marissa remembers. Right. It's a great question. Thank you. So alcoholism is an issue. Is an issue among adolescent children in Australia. Now, the 26th of January is Australia Day, and we live close to a beautiful big bay. And there's what they call the Skyworks. A radio station puts on 30 minutes of fireworks, and the hundreds of thousands of people gather around the river, around the bay. It's a huge event. So the week before the Sky Show, Marissa said to me, "Dad, can I have some friends over for this? We'll go to the Sky Show." Sure. She ended up inviting 16 friends to stay overnight. Right? Big overnight. But what we didn't realise, so they went out to the Sky Show. What we didn't realise that one of her friends, her brother was turning 18 that day. So what did they do? 18, you're allowed to drink alcohol. Now, I'm not sure if anyone in the audience has ever drunk Jim Beam. Jim Beam and Coke, it's like nectar. I remember the first time this is so good, right? So they dosed her up with Jim Beam, and then she has another one. So funnily enough, Marissa came home early from the Sky Show. And then her friends came back, and later on, she had her own area in the house. And then later on, one of her friends said, "Oh, Marissa's throwing up, but we're looking after her." Okay, so Marissa had too much to drink. So fast forward, and all the friends are gone in the next morning, right? And Pauline and I are sitting in the family room. So Marissa comes out and she sits down. So my question is, what would most parents do after their daughter, son or daughter, had too much to drink, comes home? So the question is, what would they do? Marissa remembers this. Marissa sits down. I said, "It happens to the best of us." Because there was nothing more that Pauline and I could say that she didn't learn the night before. The only thing that I would be doing is I'd be saying these words for myself. So, look, it's more about the word trust played a big role in our household. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. I trust. And when as a parent you're telling your child you trust the child, your child, for our experience, lives up to your trust. Now, if we say, "Look, where are you going? Tell me what you're going to do. I don't want you to drink any alcohol," you're actually saying, "I don't trust you." But when you're raising that bar of trust, Marissa, for us, Marissa, she was responsible, right? And not to say that she didn't drink at times, but there was never an issue. So I attribute that to the fact that mum and dad trusted me to do the right thing. So yeah, trust was a big thing.
Nice. Thank you, George, for that story. I hope I don't get to use those dialogues, but I'll keep it anyway, because Shruti is turning 18 this year, and she says that that's the first thing that she's going to do, which is try alcohol for the first time. So let's see.
Yep.
And Paneer, I hope he answered your question. Please keep the questions coming. This is the golden opportunity to ask George questions. I'm wondering why everyone is so quiet today. Gerald, come on, ask a question if you can. Help me. Now, while we're getting some help for questions, and we're listening to these lovely leadership lessons, first fatherhood, and transitioning into leadership, we realized that we missed out one video, and that's the video we're going to show. After which we'll be back to talk to George.
Hi, Dad. Mala asked me to talk to you today about some things that have influenced me through the way that you're a dad and also as a leader. So while I could say many, many things, I thought I would start with 3. The first is a good father and a good leader nurtures. You've always lifted me up, encouraged me, helped me grow, and I have no doubt that you do that for your own team as well. A good father and a good leader listens as much as he speaks. This one's really important, and you've always created an environment for me where I feel safe to speak my feelings, talk things through, validate how I'm feeling as needed. So that's an important one. And then thirdly, I think a good father and a good leader gives you the space to learn your own lessons. So a child or a person on your team needs to come to their own conclusions and make their own mistakes to be able to grow from them. And even though it might be hard, you might want to step in, take the lead, do things your way so that I don't misstep. It's really important for a kid to learn themselves, and I think you've always been good at that. So those are 3 things that I've learned from you. Love ya.
Well, you know how to make a guy cry, don't you, Muller?
No, I think it's so amazing that the stories you shared and the lessons that Marisa has taken and the impression that she has about you as a leader, right? You just said you trust your child, and because you trusted her, she is now actually saying, you know what, my father is all of this in my personal life, and I know this is what he will be as a leader. I think that's just so amazing. So for the audience who are listening, of course, George didn't know that I spoke to Marisa for the video, right? And I didn't know what he was going to say. But I just think this is so magical. And Marisa, thank you for doing this. And wow, George, what do we do now? So Panir says, wow, how great to have a daughter validate your fathering. Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, a lot of people say, oh, you're a good mother, you're a good father. But for me, I will only know when our kids feel that we've done our best.
Yeah, it's interesting, Muller. One thing that, whether it's in leadership or in parenting, every parent, and as I said, you can apply the same in leadership. You want your child to do well, and maybe do better. And what I observe is I've seen parents, they try to motivate their children to do better by telling them how bad they are. And I've seen it when a young adult son says, I'm never doing the right thing in my dad's eyes, because the dad is thinking, I'm trying to improve you. But my philosophy is you help the child in a positive way improve. Don't tell them how bad they are. Or a simple example is if Marissa comes home with an exam result, and we might think, oh, geez, maybe she could have done a bit better. So how do you think you went? Okay, are you happy with that? I think you could have done a bit better. So what would it take for you to do a bit better? Maybe spend a little bit less time talking to my friends on the phone. Yeah, I think you can do better as well. That's the conversation. That's the sum total. Rather than, hey, listen, you can do better than that. If you spend less time on the phone, right, then you're definitely. So what you do is you're deflating the child, and if you do that over time, you're having an impact on their self-esteem. Right. So it's about you lift people up. And again, you talked about it's about helping people see something that they can't see. Right. And believing. So it's about seeing something in this child. Wow, you're really good. And everyone's got their own limitations. I remember, so we at a young age, we got Marissa to take tennis lessons. After 2 lessons, we realised Marissa was not for tennis and tennis was not for Marissa. Don't force her to do stuff, right? That just because I want her to do it, it doesn't mean it's the right thing. She's just not suited, right? Yeah.
Nice. Thank you, George. Thank you for the reminders. What's coming up to my mind is that if I don't know you, right, and if I didn't love you enough, I would be tempted to say, but George doesn't understand this because he's not Malaysian, he's not Asian. What he's saying is very Western, in Malaysia, in Asia, our kids are different, our situation is different. So in I've learned a lot from you. You've opened my mind in many ways. You always challenge me. Even now, you're challenging me to think differently, to um, rise above, right? In parenting, as I listen to you, even though I've listened to you many times. So, in your observation, right? How do you see? So you've seen parenting in your part of the world where you come from, right? And you've lived here enough to be called Malaysian, I guess, right? What are some things, some challenges do you think Asian parents experience? What have you observed? And what do you think we could do better to build better self-esteem, a better self-esteem for
Yeah.
kids?
I think one of the issues is there is a way of in Australia we're probably more open giving compliments, where it's not so common, because I don't know whether it's Confucianism. If I tell the kid that he or she is good, they'll get a big head, right? And again, I was at Pauline's auntie and uncle's house, and there was a young girl. She was 19. The parents had actually moved to Paris from Malaysia. She was 19. Oh, I have a chat. What are you doing? I'm studying medicine. Wow, medicine. I have a bit of a chat, and it's a good discussion. She's a smart kid. I turned to her father. I said, "Wow, you got a smart daughter." He said, "No, she's not that smart at all." Right. So therefore, it's this, maybe the humility. It's great, but it's about the power of, my mother taught me, the major lesson my mother taught me was the power of the spoken word. And I take that one step further. Words not spoken have no value.
Words
And
not spoken has
have
no
no
value.
value.
Nice. I will say amen to that. Yeah, nice.
And so therefore it becomes, hey, listen, you're doing a good job. I really like what you're doing. Wow. And when you do that, you slowly lift the child. And I suppose if you ask, what's the challenge? Perhaps in the Asian culture, we're not so effusive with the words that we say. Right. Yeah. And it's not that people don't like to receive compliments. It's just that it's not, maybe in the past it hasn't been a part of the heritage. I think as the younger generation, it's changed. But certainly for the older one, yeah.
Nice. So Luis Marias, also an amazing dad, says, I have seen lifting your kids up is actually very effective. Maybe not always, but I've seen with my children. I feel they need to see the much bigger love that awaits them. It could be in the form of tough love. Luis is agreeing yet not agreeing. So, George, what's your take on tough love? Since Luis has brought up tough love.
Look, I think as long as maybe I haven't walked that path, because as long as your children know what the boundaries are,
nice,
and you trust them to stay within the boundaries.
Nice.
Now, I haven't experienced, of course, adolescent years, particularly, they're the tough years. But, I think this is where there's got to be some flexibility as a parent as well. If you're really rigid on the rules, you're bound to create a conflict. The question is, again, pick your battles. How important is that? Right? Question is, what is that the thing that you thought was so important? Sure, there are some you don't lie, you don't do all these things, but sometimes those boundaries, they're a bit flexible. I don't have a definite answer for that, but it's trust your children to stay within the boundaries and guide them, talk it through. Hey, listen, what happened here? Rather than say you didn't. Hey, listen, what happened? And I think this is you do this in leadership as well. Let's talk this through. How did it go? What happened? All right. That's when you become, what Marissa said, listening. It's just about, because you and I as parents or leaders, we come with our point of view. That's our point of view. But there is another point of view. Maybe the child has got another point of view, another way of seeing things. Now, what causes the conflict is if the child thinks that they're not being listened to, and they might have a valid point of view. So this is the power of listening, the power of, to me, listening communication. People talk about listening skills. The key behind communication, effective communication, is the other person feels listened to. Yeah, and Marissa, when she was 15, at the age of 15, she said to Pauline and myself, she said, I really appreciate the way you've brought me up. You've guided me, but you have not steered me.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. You've guided me, but not steered me. Thank you. Thank you, George. I'm just going to read out what Patricia says, and then I have a question before I ask Panir's question. I admire parents who handle demands and pressure at work and at home. Whole load of EQ agility on this. Definitely, Patricia. Thank you for listening in or watching.
Hi, Patricia.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that, George. So how do you? So we're talking about self-esteem, and you're talking about the power of positive words, trusting your children. These are all ideal and nice, and I believe all parents would like to do that, and all parents would like to have Marissa for their child, right? Okay, so thanks. Now, how do you keep your child grounded with only giving positive feedback?
I don't think it's only about giving positive feedback. I think there are two parts to this. One is there's the child and there's the behavior.
Nice.
Right. It's about separating the two. So because something happened, look, Marissa wasn't a perfect kid, right? But it's either you are or your behavior. And so therefore leave the person intact and talk about that thing, not this thing. Your behavior is not you. I'm talking about this thing, which is not you. As a matter of fact, you're showing faith. This is not you. And I think that's how we separate. We never, ever said you are. It might have been this is, and let's talk about this, but it never got to a negative about Marissa.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think the same goes with leadership, doesn't it? It's to separate the issue.
Separating the person from the behavior, and when you're giving feedback is to observe the behavior that you want change and don't judge the person. In terms of the behavior. Thank you, George. Panir has another question. Any parenting failures or challenges you like to share?
I suppose generally failure is not a part of my language. Learning is a part of my language.
Nice.
I don't use the language of failure. But one time, I think there's one time Marissa wanted to go to a party, and I think there's going to be alcohol, and this was early on in the piece, and we didn't know how to handle it. So I rang one of my brother, and he said, "I'll tell you, she can't go." It wasn't my normal way of doing it, and then we said, "No, that's the only time. This is my key learning, which we took away, strong learning." And that was the only time that we actually said, "Marissa, we don't trust you." It would have and that upset me to say that. I knew it just didn't make me feel comfortable, and it upset Marissa. And then I went in early the next morning and spoke with Marissa, and she ended up going to the party. But my failure was just, I had a compass north, trust, and I didn't stick to that compass north. And look, at times you might make a you might make a mistake, right? If we made the judgment and your child doesn't do the right thing, then again it's about talking about the behavior. Challenges. I think the challenge is, particularly when your child reaches the age of adolescence, the challenge is to change your parenting style. The word now, inward is agility, right? You've got to be agile parents. So Marissa is not, your child is no longer a 10-year-old. You can no longer tell. It's about listening, and you nurture it in a different way. Because for me, what we want is a child who's independent, can make good decisions, and it's about helping them develop those skills as they get older through adolescence. You don't wait until they're 18, 19 and 20. And that's one of the things that, I think, I say to Marissa now, I said, you make really good decisions.
Nice.
She does. She makes really good decisions. And that comes, and we all learn, don't we? We don't learn how to make good decisions overnight. It's by making some good decisions and making some bad ones, learning from bad ones and moving on.
Nice. Thank you. So, George, how do you now apply? Because I know, in terms of trust, you do the same at work, right? At least that's my experience. I remember my first learning and my first failure where I was really overconfident.
I remember it well.
Yeah, it's a life lesson, right? And after I failed so terribly, I was thinking, like, why didn't you tell me, right? And there was a great risk that you took with me to allow me to fail and figure out my blind spot, because I was really sure that I could hack the program. I was really sure it was not anything else, right? So I didn't know what I didn't know, and I failed, right? It still haunts me. Yeah. Yeah,
it's a good story. I love that story.
Yeah. And there are times whenever the client name comes up, I say, I just need to give them back the 2 days,
Right.
because I didn't. So there are times I've been tempted to say, I'm just going to write to them and say, I owe you 2 days. Can you just give me 2 days program and I will charge you for it? So I know you've done that for me, let me fail. So you obviously saw that, I wasn't ready, and then you let me fail. And I've seen you do that for people, and I've witnessed that myself. So tell me, as a leader, as a business owner, what gives you courage to take that risk? Because you're taking a business risk in trusting people who mean well.
Yeah. Okay. So one is, it was interesting. I was doing a project with a client, and one of the senior people said, I don't trust people at the very beginning. I thought, wow. So they have to earn my trust. I'm the opposite. I trust people. And so I trust them from the beginning, and, might be guiding them. And so that's the critical part. It's my mindset. I trust people. I suppose, but you've got to just trust is this thing. If, as a leader, also, if you find that people are not up to it, then you've got to be a little bit more closely in the way you manage them. So it's not as if I give everyone a free rein, right? It's set them free, and then some people need coaching in the beginning, right? And then, but once you set them free, if they still need support, then I still need to be with them, all right? But I think if you're going to ask me, look, I haven't always been a good leader. I think I've been a lousy leader in the past. Yeah, I have. And some of the lessons on the way, it's the power of listening. And probably, I think the biggest trait for a leader is self-awareness. Right. Now, when I say self-awareness, it becomes when I'm in a conversation, I'm in a conversation with you and observing you, but there is someone observing us, and that's like an observational listening approach. So, in other words, I'm observing my interaction with people. And therefore, when I reflect on it, how did I go? And that person is advising me, how did I go? Right? What would you have modified if, in the way that you interacted? So to me, self-awareness is a critical element of leadership. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's the number one element of being a good leader. And then it comes with the listening and the empathy. I've got one member of my team, right, and Aggie, right, and for the first 2 years, the funny story is, first 2 years, Aggie was wondering, how do I communicate with George, right? And I gave her some tough feedback early on, because she had enormous potential. But I gave her, at times, we talk about tough feedback. I gave her tough feedback, honest feedback. It's never disrespectful feedback, but it's honest feedback. And now, she's become a superstar, and she says, "You've set me free. You've set me free." All right. And I think the leader, you multiply your effectiveness by setting people free rather than trying to control them.
Thank you, George. So, George, I like the fact that, you thought you were a lousy leader before. I've known you for 17 years. I want a glimpse of the lousy leader because I can't recall, right? So, help us understand. So, you obviously, with your own observation, your own reflection, you've worked on yourself because you said, there were times I was lousy, but I listened better and I got better, right? So when you say that you, with self-awareness, that you have self-developed, and you've become a better person, i.e., a better leader, better person in leadership, what would be some things that you shifted?
Okay.
What are some shifts you made?
Our dear friend Tan Chong Yu, a very dear friend, he's retired from our organisation, made a huge difference, and he was our chief learning officer. Now, I was not aware of this. George Aveling, in the past, was a very competitive guy. You got a view, I got a view, right? And let's see whose view is the better view, because I'm a smart guy, right? So your view so conversations became competitions. But I was not aware of this because I had a view. So one day, I'm in a discussion with Chong Yu, and he said something, and of course, what does George come through with his view? My view. And Chong Yu said 8 words which had a significant impact on my life. He said, all I want is to feel listened to. That floored me. That absolutely floored me. And that got me on this journey of just, how have you been doing this? Wow, what you've been doing, George, is that guy advising me. What you've been doing is you've been putting your view, so people eventually say it's George's way. Right? Oh, look, let him have his way. Let him have his way. Right? And so now it's, as much as possible, if someone comes up with an idea, that's an interesting idea. How are you going to make that happen? Right? That I might not feel comfortable immediately with the idea. As a matter of fact, I might not be sure of the idea. And that still happens. But let the idea run, because it's actually helping people fly and learn. So Marshall Goldsmith, he said, as a leader, a team might be working on something and they present something to you, and then you think you can improve it by 5%. He said, you've got to weigh up that 5% improvement against how much you're going to demotivate the team. And that had a big impact on me as well. Is it worth it? Is it really? No, good guys, good job. Good job. Otherwise, you're conditioning them, Papa George, got to wait for Papa George, Uncle George, to come up with it. with all the answers. Oh, well, George will fix it. Now, there's still, there's still an experience factor, and I want to move away from that. But the aim is to have people use their own judgment as much as they can, and to have them have the courage to use the judgment as much as they can.
Nice. So you seem to be, what I'm taking from you is that, so even though you might be able to see how one can do better, of course, you're going to do the listening and you're going to do the coaching, and you're hoping that person will get there himself or herself. But you seem to be the type of leader who's willing to nurture and wait for them to be ready in their own time.
Look, there's situations even now where I think, oh, geez, I'd do this differently. I would. There are situations. However, I've got to, if the only way for people to grow is I can guide them, right, ask questions, but I can't be doing it for them. Right? And at times it hurts, to be honest, because I could do better than this, right? If only. But the people not growing if George is the one that's telling them.
Right. So tell me, I think this would probably be the right last question. So, and that's the part I want to capture, right? So I love the fact that you've helped me by saying, it's painful, it's difficult, it's not easy to do, because we don't know your pain, right? But you seem to be doing it seamlessly, right? But there is pain involved in letting people grow, because that's where probably your own growth resides, right? So what do you do during this moment of waiting for the other person to grow, and while you are going through your own growth? How do you manage this thing?
Look, I think it's about set people free, and things might not go as well as you would like. Then you talk to them. Hey, listen, a couple of things about that, but you don't tell them. You ask them. So, what did you reckon? So, here's an observation of what happened. What do you think? Right. But it's always giving space for a conversation to happen, because as soon as you tell, you're crowding out space for any conversation.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you very much, George. Thank you very much. Now, I'm just curious, right? So if I know how you're remembered from the videos, I think people are saying how you'd be remembered. But in your own mind, in your own space, right? How would George, you think, would be remembered?
I won an award at the global level, and I think the same words that I said then, and I'll be very brief. Number one, I live an unconditional life, right? And it is, if I give to you, I don't expect anything back. That's number one. And number two, I learned the law of abundance. There's a lot to go around. So if I give to you, I lose nothing. So why wouldn't I give? So that's that generosity. So I think that George gave unconditionally, and hopefully, he made a small difference. And that's it.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, that says so much about you, because I've received unconditionally from you for sure. Yeah. And, I've learned, the gift of abundance, because I have actually remembered the spaces at work where, I learned abundance from you, and the way you operated, because that was a very different way of managing a business.
But one thing I've got to add, Mulder, for everyone to know, you've inspired me, right? You've been a good friend, and everyone knows, Mulder Villy is a very generous person. And I keep, people don't know, I do these text messages, and I said, you've energized me as well. You've been the wind under my wing. So it's just a joy to know you, Mulder, and to be inspired by you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot, and it will mean a lot every other time you text me or tell me, because, you've just said, words not spoken has no value. So you've given me a lot of value in the words that you've spoken to me every other time. Just going to read Victor Fu. A veteran father once said to me, with kids, I seek first to listen and understand, and then I speak to be understood. It shows and role model respect and appreciation works with my wife too. Thank you, Victor. Victor Fu, thank you very much. George, before we say goodbye, thank you very much. Happy Father's Day. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being
Thank
such
you,
a
Mala.
beautiful gift. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience before we say goodbye?
No, I think we've basically said it. I think it just see the best in people. There's that saying, you see the world not as it is, but as who you are.
Thank you.
So just, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are going to say goodbye to George. Oh, we have one more comment coming in. Thank you, Mallory George. Wonderful session, stories, learning. Hope to cross path with you one day for coffee at Starbucks. Yes. And you would be smitten, Gerald. Now, with that, George, thank you for your time. Thank you for saying
Mala.
yes. Thank you for being in live. God bless you. I love you and stay wonderful. All
Love
right.
you too, Mala.
With that, we'll say bye to George. And, I hope you've enjoyed this as much. Join us on Spotify if you're not able to watch. We're on Spotify. Look for Being Whole, Being Me. If you just want to listen to the voice. And if you have time, of course, you can catch up with our YouTube. Please subscribe, share, and tell us what else and who else we can bring on our show. With that, thank you very much for the fathers who are fathers and who play fathers in other people's life. Happy Father's Day. Know that you make a huge difference in many people's life you may not know. And for those who know fathers who are both biological and who play father figures, well, I hope what George says will resonate with you. What's not spoken has no value. So remember to say what you want to say while they're still around. One message away. With that, thank you very much. See you next week once again with another guest. And we are still on the topic of fatherhood. Bye. See you then. Signing off.